Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Hello, you made it to the Eugene Cannabis TV show. I've got a couple stories here I wanted to tell you about, and maybe a few words to the wise. The first I wanted to talk about is drug sniffing dogs. This is something that we all need to be cautious of and be aware of and be ready for. The article here is saying that false positives suggest police exploit canines to justify searches. Ex-cop is saying that police are using the dogs to trample our rights as citizens. A study of false positives involving drug-sniffing police dogs suggests some police forces may be using cannabis to do an in-run around constitutional protections against search and seizure, and may be profiting for profiling racial minorities in the process. A survey of primarily suburban police departments in Illinois carried out by the Chicago Tribune found that 56% of all police searches triggered by a drug-sniffing dog turned nothing up. But perhaps tellingly, the number jumped into 73% when the search involved a Latino subject, meaning that nearly 3/4 of all dog alerts on Latinos turned up no contraband. The study covered a 2-year period from 2007 to 2009. Police spokesmen say the numbers are no surprise because dogs' noses can sniff the residue of drugs on a person or in a vehicle long after the drugs have been removed. But civil liberties advocates smell a rat and say this is evidence that the police are using canines to carry out racial profiling and unjustified searches. The dog training experts say the problem stems at least in part from an almost complete lack of standards for police dogs in the United States. We know that there is a level of racial profiling going on, and this is just another indicator of that. Virginia Martinez, an attorney for the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, told the Tribune, "People of color are just targets." Barry Cooper, a former Texas police officer who has worked with police dogs, told Raw Story that the use of canines has gone out of control in Arizona. They're using dogs as an excuse to search cars when people refuse consent. The reason it's like this is because the dogs aren't always really alerting. It's actually the cops using these dogs to trample our rights as citizens. Cooper said that he was recently hired to assess an Arizona police dog handler's record. Out of 50 traffic stops, the canine reportedly alerted on every car but 4. Drugs were only found on 6 occasions, he said. Lawrence Myers, an Auburn University professor who studies police dogs, told the Tribune that residue from long-term drugs isn't the only way a dog can give a false positive. Dog handlers can trigger a false positive from a dog by walking it around a car too many times or too slowly, giving the dog a clue that a certain behavior is expected. Myers pointed to the clever Hans phenomenon in the early 1900s, named after a horse whose owner claimed the animal could read and do math before a psychologist determined the horse was actually responding to the master's unwitting cues. Cooper told Raw Story that part of the problem stems from a lack of standards for police dogs. There is no standardized test for these dogs. Anyone could open up tomorrow and start selling dogs to cops. The Tribune notes that the legal system offers little remedy for the problem, because while drug seizures end up in court, false positives don't, leaving little room for judges to rule on the legality of the searches. Put together, the situation makes for an alarming opportunity to violate individuals' rights, civil activists say. We've seen a national outcry about being frisked and scanned at airports, ACLU attorney Adam Schwartz told the Tribune. The experience of having police take your car apart for an hour is far more invasive and frightening and humiliating. So the main thing is that we always like to tell people is never consent to a search. Never. They'll try to scare you, intimidate you. You have to stay firm and never consent to a search. They may search anyway. This is what attorneys tell us. that they may search you anyway, but if they find something, the attorney has something to work with if you refuse to search. But if you consented to a search, then he hasn't got much to work with to defend you. So it's a word to the wise, and I like to remind people that we are in a war on drugs. This is a war on ourselves. So just be cautious. We talk about transporting your medicine safely in bags that prevent the smell, like the oven baking bags that we've talked about on the show before. Very reasonable, and they definitely cut down on the odor. Also, a lot of points that, to think of if you're being pulled over. Just act normal. Don't start glancing in the mirror, looking over your shoulder. Don't start moving your upper body like you're stashing stuff. If you're going to stash something, be sure your body only moves from the elbows down, so that the cops, because he's watching you every second to see what happens. You just got to be cool and keep your head. It's like any other situation. If you don't panic, you'll get through it. But if you panic, you lose it. So. But the main thing is, again, is never consent to a search, and that's the important thing to remember. The other thing we want to talk about here is how the marketplace is evolving, and now that the Measure 74 has failed. That was the initiative to create medical marijuana dispensaries in the state of Oregon. This is a story about a lady by the name of Cabrin. She recently borrowed $15,000 from her family and friends, credit cards, and everything she could pull together to start a business. She's a ex-financial officer. She turned a former reptile rescue facility in Aloha, which is a suburb of Portland, into a medical marijuana exchange. Opened the day before Thanksgiving and now boasts 130 members who pay money to obtain the cannabis in the storefront space, a block off of Tualatin Valley Highway. Cabrin's investment is already paying off. On her biggest day yet, she and her business partner, Andrew Gwynn, grossed $2,500. An average day is more like $1,700. 3 months ago, I don't know this was even possible, says Cameron, sitting in the lobby of her Wake and Bake Cannabis Lounge with her Pomeranian Sassy sitting in her lap. We're trying to run this as a business like any other. In the midst of Oregon's long economic malaise, you could be forgiven for failing to register one of the state's few economic bright spots, a burgeoning industry growing out of basements, gardens, and converted shop fronts across the state. And it's probably unregulated and under the radar. Just 3 weeks before Cameron's club opened, 56% of Oregon voters rejected Measure 74, a ballot initiative that would have established a system of medical marijuana dispensaries virtually indistinguishable from the outfit Cameron is running. Oregon's somewhat unclear medical marijuana law makes no mention of dispensaries. Cardholders without a designated grower have to score weed on the black market. With Oregon unemployment stuck above 10%, entrepreneurs are moving in to fill that void by working in the seams. There are a lot of people pushing the envelope right now, says Paul Stanford, a longtime marijuana activist from Portland. There were so many people geared up for Measure 74 to pass, now they're moving forward anyway. This is Paul Stanford, who is the CEO of the THC Foundation. It's an organization that is working on legalization of cannabis, and the main thing they're doing is have clinics in, I think, 6 or 7 states and getting patients their cards. He says others are holding back for fear of breaking the law. Anthony Johnson, which is a co-writer of Measure 74, said it's a total gray area. He says people are are willing to enter the market, are willing to take on a risky behavior. Johnson says, I fear it will have unintended consequences for Oregon Medical Marijuana Act, particularly in the light of any bad publicity that may come about because of the lack of regulation. And this is very true, because there are different, there's a dispensary that's been out of Coos Bay for a couple years that I know of. And I don't know how they're getting by it myself, but they're surviving. This article goes on to say marijuana has long been the largest cash crop in Oregon, which is something we all knew. Bigger than wheat, bigger than grass seed, bigger than Christmas trees. Now, 12 years after Oregonians opened the door to medical marijuana, we're seeing what that industry looks like when it steps into the open. Here are three tales on marijuana market's front lines. First, the story of a mom-and-pop startup, the backbone of a pioneering trade. Second, a more sophisticated effort to franchise an American business model nationwide. And third is a cautionary tale of coming economic boom and bust from an old school grower cynical of the new enterprise. It's the Thursday afternoon before Christmas, and Cameron's Wake and Bake Cannabis Lounge is experiencing a busy rush as members stock up on their drug supply for the holidays. They park out front, flash their ID, and walk into the business. Almost nothing is called by its common name. After Measure 74 failed, the term dispensary became taboo. Cameron calls her place a cannabis exchange. Their product is medicine, and the customers are patients. They don't sell marijuana. Instead, cannabis is available for reimbursement. The smoking den is a medicating lounge. A store stocked with paraphernalia, seeds, soil, t-shirts, and baby pot plants is a green room. Industry insiders estimate that around 30 such businesses pepper the state, from Portland to tiny Tri-City, population 3,500. No one knows exactly how many exist because they're completely unregulated. More than 20 advertise in the trade publication Oregon Cannabis Connection, a bi-monthly newspaper that is published out of Grants Pass. Although limited to participants in the medical marijuana program, competition is nevertheless intense. Wake and Bake is the third club to open in the Beaverton, Aloha area, Cameron says. Without legal standing or regulation, Cameron says it's a bit like the Wild West. But like any other industry, we're trying to do what is correct. It talks about how she had foster kids, and the state actually took the foster kids out of her home after she notified them that she was a medical marijuana patient and had opened the business. She says, many of our young people have drug addiction issues, says Michael Bolter, head of the Boys and Girls Aid Society. If they can find that in the home or smell it or see it, it's very provocative. So it goes on to talk about the Stony Girl Gardens, which is friends of ours, Mike and Jen. They're opening a couple of facilities also up in the Portland area, and have plans on opening up to 40 more, according to this article. So things already started, so to speak. The cat's out of the bag, so things are rolling. So if you need any information on any medical marijuana or any other marijuana issues, be sure and get called in contact with us. Any of the contact email or information on the screen. My name is Dan, and I'm willing to help you any way I can. And definitely could use some guests. If I could come on the show and talk about cannabis and how it's affected your life, please come on. We're looking for people to come and tell their stories. And same thing if you have trouble with law enforcement and need to talk about it. Come on and see what we can do to help. So thanks for being with us, and have a great day, and be careful. Thank you.
When a bag of marijuana is touched, microscopic dust is transferred to your hand. Whatever you touch after that, you're transferring this microscopic dust, and the dog can and will alert. Steve picked the dog that has this psycho-type drive to find his ball. That's a prey drive. I found it almost impossible to get my narcotic detector dog to search for his ball when there was some other type of prey in the same area. For instance, a cat in the car. Even if we removed the cat, the dog could still smell the cat all over the car, and he was concentrating on where's the cat, not where's the ball. It was impossible to get my canine to search for marijuana in vehicles if we were pulled over near a roadkill. I would have the driver move the vehicle ahead at least 2 miles so the dog could get that other animal or that other prey out of his mind where he could concentrate on searching for marijuana. So these deer scents and fox urines that hunters use, it's a good idea to spray your tires with that. It's a good idea to carry a cat in your car if you're going to have a couple of marijuana cigarettes. This confuses the dog where his drive is channeled to chasing these things instead of looking for the marijuana.
And now a message from the American Marijuana Growers Association.
Hi, I'm a farmer, and I work hard every day to grow high-quality marijuana, the biggest cash crop in these United States. I'd like to thank you for your support of U.S. marijuana policy. Because marijuana is illegal, I don't have to pay taxes. Even better, prohibition leads to artificially inflated prices, which means a better quality of life for me and my family, as long as I don't get caught. Just as importantly, your tax dollars support thousands of U.S. agents who work tirelessly to keep low-grade, foreign marijuana out of our country. So thank you, America. And remember, whether you're nauseated from chemotherapy or just in the mood for a nice cool buzz, choose the best pot in the world, American Homegrown.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great honor to be here with all you normal folk here at the Cannabis Cafe. I got my activism start in Missouri at the University of Missouri and Missouri Normal chapters. They're in my opinion, a mentoring giant in the marijuana reform movement is an attorney named Dan Vietz. And Dan Vietz is a national normal board member along with Madeline. And he's in Missouri working hard for over 2 decades of fighting for freedom and equality for not only medical marijuana patients, but for all adults who choose to use cannabis. And yeah, please, a round of applause to everybody who's out there working on this issue and fighting for freedom and equality, because that's what it is all about. Because of Dan, I helped co-author and pass a medical marijuana provision in Columbia, Missouri that allowed for medicinal use for the doctor's recommendation and decriminalized the use for all adults who possessed personal amounts. And so that way in Columbia, Missouri, students don't lose their financial aid, you're not burdened with a drug conviction when you apply for a job, and patients who have a doctor's recommendation can use medical cannabis. And all you Oregon patients, if you ever find yourself in Columbia, Missouri, your card is good there as well, so you're allowed to possess up to 35 grams of medical cannabis in Columbia, Missouri. My first job in Oregon practicing law was because of a man back here named Leland Berger. Leland back here. Leland's been an activist for over 2 decades here in Oregon. Don't want to give away how he's such an old man, but he's been put 2 decades into this fight. They're helping draft the original Medical Marijuana Act. I saw. Only going to take 5. I saw an online ad at Lewis and Clark Law School about somebody needing legal help, and so I showed up for a job interview wearing a suit, and I was certain that I lost my chance at the job because Lee, who I'm interviewing with, is wearing his usual tie-dye t-shirt that, as you can see, he's wearing tonight, and shorts, and I was like, oh, I cost myself a job by wearing this suit. I shouldn't have done that. But Lee gave a call to Dan Vietz back in Missouri, and Dan Vietz recommended me, and so Lee got me my start in activism here in Oregon. So thank you so much for that. And also on the wall in Lee's office, I saw his High Times Freedom Fighter of the Month article on his wall. And I remember thinking to myself, someday, maybe I can be High Times Freedom Fighter of the Month if I work at it. And And issue number 420, I got written up as high time. Three of us in this room. Russ Belleville, outreach coordinator for.
It's
We got 4 of us here. 4 of us, all right. Radical Russ Belleville of Normal had a great write-up, generous write-up of me, and gave me more credit than I deserve, because anything that we accomplish as an activist is because of other giants that we stand upon their shoulders and the people that we work with. And my co-chief petitioners are here. First, Alice Ivany. Back here, Alice, please stand up. Alice is a grandmother from Lincoln County who lost an arm in an industrial accident, and due to years of reefer madness propaganda, she was somebody who was scared to speak out and scared to get access to medical cannabis, and she went 17 months without any medicine after she became a legal medical marijuana patient. And so when we fight this fight, we want access for state patients. It's patients like Alice who we fight for. And so thank you so much, Alice. Alice has gone from somebody who was scared to speak out to now somebody who's president of Oregon Green Free and one of the top activists in the state, willing to speak her story and tell the truth to legislators and policymakers all across the state. So thank you so much, Alice, for being co-chief petitioner. Also, Jim Clark. Please, Jim, stand up. Jim Clark, co-chief petitioner, CEO of Oregon Green Free. Jim, dedicated activist, a great person to learn from. Jim is currently on a transplant list for a new liver at OHSU Hospital, and he hasn't even been able to use medical cannabis since 2004. Am I correct? Because you're on that transplant list, and it's just totally unfair, and I think Sunil could probably explain more how unfair it is that Jim's not allowed to use medical cannabis, and being tested positive for medical cannabis kicks you off transplant list. But here Jim is on a list, but he's still fighting for other medical marijuana patients. Oregon Green Free has an online forum with over 6,000 people, a grow store, a clinic, a patient resource center, and Jim's been the man behind all of that. And so Jim, please, thank you so much. Jim spent some time in the hospital with an infection, and I had to pick up the slack and take up some of the work that he did. And for about 3 weeks to a month, I'm doing a little extra work, and I'm about to go insane. So I don't know how Jim does it, and it's just really great. And the reason why I'm about to go insane and not totally insane are volunteers like Martha Duff. Martha, my mother-in-law, Martha, please stand up. Because anytime we accomplish anything, there are so many volunteers who are helping out, to make this event this great, to do Oregon Normal cardholder meetings. There's so many volunteers who put in so much time, and they're really the unsung heroes of the movement. And Martha puts in so many hours at our clinic for no pay, and her putting in hours like that allow me and other activists to do our job and to be a great cannabis activist. But it's because of volunteers like Martha. So thank you so much, Martha. And, the one thing that that separates Martha and other activists is she gave birth to my wife, Sarah Duff. So Sarah, please stand up. I really believe that Sarah and Madeline and women in the room and women in the movement are really the key to legalizing cannabis. I think the propaganda of marijuana has really infected people of all stripes. It really hurts people who are mothers and women. And it's people like Madeline, people like Martha, people like Sarah who stand up and say, no, you can be a woman, you can be a mother, you're not a mother. We know marijuana is safer than alcohol. We know marijuana is a non-toxic herbal remedy. And it needs to be available. And prohibition is more harm than marijuana itself. And we're going to legalize it because of women like Sarah. So thank you so much, Sarah. Because of Sarah, I'm a better person and a better activist because of Sarah, and Sarah is one of the top activists in the state in her own right. Going up and down the state during Measure 74, holding town halls, and fearlessly speaking the truth to anybody that'll listen. Strongholds like Portland, but also going into rural areas where people may not be as receptive, but she's willing to go down there and speak the truth. And really proud of her and proud of everybody that does that. And although Measure 74 did not win at the ballot box, it had many, many victories. And as an activist, it's very important to appreciate our victories and not be upset by any setbacks that we may have. Measure 74 got the endorsement of the Democratic Party of Oregon, the first time a Democratic Party of a state had endorsed the marijuana measure on the ballot. The former Supreme Court Justice of the Oregon Supreme Court endorsed the measure, and former Mayor and Police Chief Tom Potter supported the measure, did a radio commercial, an op-ed piece for us, so I really think that because of Measure 74, we're in a stronger position than we were without it. So that's the most important thing, is that we keep moving and keep moving forward. And like Madeline said, we're going to unite. And we're going to go out there, we're going to keep putting out good ideas, keep speaking the truth about cannabis, and someday the truth shall set us all free. So thank you so much.
I'd like to present the Coalition for Patients' Rights. And Anthony, I'm going to let you take this to your whole crew, let's say. Okay, Freedom Fighter of the Year Award presented to Coalition for Patients' Rights for their compassionate support of access to medicine for Oregon patients and their hard work and campaign for the campaign to pass Measure 74. So that's it. I'm really excited.
Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Why these people who want to do so much good for everyone, who call themselves governments and this and that, why?